Greetings, I'm Shad and welcome to the final episode in the Truth About the Falchion and MESSER series. In this episode, I have the pride, the privilege, nay, the pleasure to present to you the Elmslie Typology. Now, of course, when you hear the Elmslie Typology, you will probably be making a comparison, if you are familiar with swords, with the Oakeshott Typology. What is the Oakeshott Typology? It is a categorization system for medieval double-edged swords. It also puts a categorization system on types of crossguards and pummels, but there is no mention or reference at all to medieval single-edged swords. The Oakeshott Typology doesn't have that at all. Indeed, the medieval single-edged sword has been almost neglected by sword enthusiasts and the academic community at large. Now, I don't mean, like, neglected. We love the Messer, and we love falchions and things like that, but in terms of doing deep, accurate research, finding out what is the truth about these swords, well, in that regard, they have been largely neglected. And no categorization system, to my knowledge, has ever been put pen to paper before until James Elmslie decided to do it. And I commend him, because it's needed. We just have not had a categorization system yet. Well, now we do, and I get to present it to you with Mr. Elmslie's permission, of course. All credit goes to him. He has done all the work, all the research. This is his typology. Please go check out him on his website, and we will hear from more of him in the future, because this typology is starting to get more recognition in the academic community. It's being presented in more museums and more publications, so it's a thing, alright? And now I get to share it with you. To begin, the Elmslie Typology builds off of the Oakeshott Typology, and it uses the same classification for crossguards and pummels. It has all the blade profiles, or all the common style of blade profiles that you'll find throughout the medieval period, starting with the classic cogners or falchion and all the way through to classic kind of Messer blade profiles. And this is kind of the first part of the typology, the difference between Messer and falchion. How do you define if this blade profile is on a Messer or a falchion? Well, he has a very simple answer to that, with the beginning letter F or M. So if you say it's a type F whatever, you are now referring to a sword that has the handle construction of a sword, therefore it's a falchion. But if you say it's a type M something, you are then saying that it has the handle construction of a knife, therefore it is a Messer. And this kind of prefix, this F or M, can be ascribed to any one of these sword profiles. There are 5 types all up, so it would be type F1, type F2, so on and so forth, all the way up to 5, with subcategories, if there are subcategories within the classification of type 1 or whatever, and that would be A, B, C, so on, depending how many subtypes there are. So you could have type M1A or type F5B. And the next part in explaining how his typology is constructed is in regards to how curvature is handled, because if you were to try and identify each individual, make a different blade definition for each curve, you would have hundreds, and it would be too complex. So what James has done is define blade curve with either a symbol starting with 0, plus, or plus, or minus. So minus is implying an inverse curve. So if you have a sword, it's curving forward. That's a minus curve. A 0 curve is one that obviously doesn't have a curve. It's just a straight blade. And then plus, slight curve, plus, more significant curve. And then it even goes to plus, which is a very significant curve. So that's a very elegant way of handling which way the sword curves, because nearly any one of these blade profiles can have any rate of curve, like really any. In regards to the 3D models that I have made for the Elmslie Typology, I have made them all with a curve rate of 0. So these are all straight-bladed swords, essentially single-edged, but all straight-bladed. So when you're looking at the 3D models I've made, please remember that they also can have curves as well. Some slight curves, some significant. So just, that's something to keep in mind. And I will also say in regards to that, even though I've done a zero rate of curve on all the models I've made, that's not to imply that the blade profile that I'm showing was more traditionally straight. Okay, there are some cases where a blade profile that I've modeled to be straight would be far more common to have a curve on it. Something also to note about the models that I'll be showing, length can vary as well. I've tried to model them in regards to the most common, standard length of the time, beginning with the early falchions, they're a bit shorter, and then we get to the other end of the typology, they are generally a bit longer, and the longest, blade lengths hit around 80 centimeters. So now I'm going to go through each sword on the typology to give us a close-up look at what it is, a brief explanation of the difference, what's the kind of iconic thing about or a feature of this blade profile, and where I am able, I will also be showing some surviving examples of this type of sword, this type of blade profile. Now, when I reference typology types, I won't be including pummel and crossguard types because they're included on the Oakeshott typology, so there's no point in reinventing the wheel in that case. Just remember that pummel and crossguard classifications can be added to the Elmslie typology in the exact same way that they can be added to the Oakeshott typology. I won't be, because I want to focus on the Elmslie typology specifically. Now, to kick us off, there are the type 1s, specifically A, B, C, and D. These refer to the cleaver style falchions, beginning with the Cluny or Conyers falchion, which is type 1A. Type 1B falchions are defined by the lack of a point. They are very much just straight up cutters, okay? In regards to blade profile and stuff like that, they will share many similarities with the previous type, the Cluny Conyers style falchion type 1A. The Massajoski Bible shows a variant of this style of falchion that has kind of a circular cutout on the back tip, and this is what creates type 1C. There is an interesting evolution in this style of falchion when we come to type 1D, and that is the addition of a very pronounced point. Clearly this adds tremendous thrusting capacity to this type of falchion. And here we come to type 2. Now, while there are clear evolutionary links between type 1 and type 2, there are significant differences and changes in design philosophy that has justified having this blade profile be its own category. The primary difference being that this type has a far more pronounced negative curve on it. So this is a edge that curves forward instead of back. Because of the forward curve, it almost makes like a pick-like tip before it loops back in kind of a clipped point to the large spike at the end. And that is significantly different from the curved kind of edge that you have on the type 1D, which then curves into its own spike. Type 3 blades are distinctive by having a clipped point. What that means is, when you have the blade curving to the tip, at the tip it has a separate kind of inverse curve to the back edge. That is what a clipped point is. The type 3A blade has the steepest clipped point, and it gets gradually more shallow when you go to type 3B and type 3C. Type 3D is a little bit distinctive from the three previous blade profiles that we've just covered, in that the clipped point is much shorter. And lastly, in the type 3 category is E, or type 3E, which is defined by having two clipped points at the back edge. Type 4 blades are defined by having steps on the back spine. Now this is interesting because they're kind of like a notch or a downward step or an upward step. Type 4A has both. It has a downward step traveling up from the hilt, and then the spine is gradual, it can be curved or straight, towards the tip. And when it gets towards the tip, it has an upward step or notch at the tip. Type 4B has a single downward step, and type 4C has a single upward step. Type 4D, instead of having a downward step after the hilt, has a very consistent spine until you get past halfway or closer to the tip. And then it has an upward step and a downward step before you reach the tip. And finally, we come to the type 5 blades. Now, the thing about the type 5 blades is that it is common to find them straight, specifically type B and type C. Type A, so type 5A, can be either, they can have very pronounced curves or they can be straight. It seems to be more common to be curved because the type 5A blade is the very classic kind of Kriegsmesser blade profile. The thing that defines the type 5A blade profile is how much the edge and spine taper before it reaches the end, where it will then curve into the point. The distance between the edge and spine will generally be very consistent and the same from at the hilt to that end point. There can be slight tapering, and sometimes it can be even a little bit thicker. Type 5B blades are very interesting. They are more often straight, and they will have a prominent single edge, but also with a back false edge. Now, this back false edge is not a clipped point, it actually forms an almost symmetrical profile. The important distinction about this profile is that it is not perfectly symmetrical, and there will be a predominant larger edge. So the main cutting edge, which will be the true edge, the one facing your opponent, will be much greater. And then the back edge will generally only travel about a third down the blade, if there is even a back edge, or it could travel even further. So it's basically an unbalanced symmetrical design with a more primary and larger cutting edge as opposed to the back end. Type 5C blades have a very consistent and gradual taper to generally quite an acute point. And there you have it! That is the Elmslie typology. Type 1, A, B, C, and D. Type 2, Type 3, A, B, C, D, and E. Type 4, A, B, C, and D. And Type 5, A, B, and C. These are the medieval single-edged sword as defined and categorized by the Elmslie typology. It has been an absolute pleasure to be able to present and explain this typology to you. I hope you use it. You will find it very, very useful. I've also made some images out of my 3D models of the Elmslie typology and put them up in a high resolution on my DeviantArt page as a free resource for anyone. There is a link to it in the description. Please use it as your leisure. And of course, a massive big thank you to James Elmslie for all the tremendous help he has offered in helping me make this video series for you. Thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have enjoyed making it, and until next time, farewell. If you would like to support Shadowversity or express appreciation for a video that you particularly enjoyed, please become a patron through Patreon. Your $1 donation would be absolutely wonderful.